The email arrived at 6:12 a.m. before the sun rose over Chicago. Before Daniel Harper finished his first cup of coffee, before he knew his life was about to change. The subject line was short and sharp. Mandatory meeting, 9 a.m. After 25 years at Riverton Financial Group, Daniel had learned to read tone. This one felt cold. Final, he closed his laptop, straightened his tie, and told himself not to jump to conclusions. Still, his hands shook as he locked the door behind him. The city moved fast that morning. Trains roared, horns blared, people rushed with purpose. Daniel had once moved like that too, when Riverton was small and every client felt like a shared victory. He had been there when the firm was just 4 desks and a dream. He had been there when Richard Collins asked him to stay late, to work weekends, to help build something real. Daniel had said yes every time. At 8:58 a.m., Daniel sat outside Richard's office. The glass walls showed a man scrolling on his phone, not looking up. No smile, no nod. When Daniel was called in, the door closed softly behind him, like a quiet warning. Richard didn't waste time. "We're restructuring," he said, eyes fixed on a folder. "The board agrees we need a different image, younger, sharper." Daniel waited. He had guided hundreds of families through college plans, retirements, losses. He had buried friends and clients, attended weddings, held hands at funerals. He had never needed a sharper image to do right by people. "You're being let go," Richard said. "Effective today." The words landed hard and clean. No anger, no sadness. Just a sudden emptiness. Daniel searched Richard's face for something: regret, memory, respect. He found none. "After 25 years?" he asked, voice steady. "This isn't personal," Richard replied. "It's business." Daniel nodded. He had learned long ago that arguing with someone who had already decided was pointless. He stood, thanked Richard for the opportunity, and walked out. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. People avoided his eyes. A few whispered. No one stopped him. At his desk, Daniel packed quickly. He took a framed photo of his late wife, Emily, smiling on a windy beach in Michigan. She had believed in kindness the way others believed in luck. He took a notebook filled with handwritten client notes, birthdays, fears, hopes. He left the rest. By noon, he was gone. The afternoon stretched wide and strange. Daniel walked along the lake, letting the wind clear his thoughts. He told himself this was the end of a chapter, not the whole story. Still, the silence hurt. His phone buzzed once, then again. He didn't check it until evening. The first voicemail was short. "Daniel, this is Mark Reynolds. I heard what happened. Please call me." The second was longer, confused, concerned. By the fifth, Daniel sat down. Then came a familiar voice, calm and careful. "Daniel, it's Claire Mitchell. I don't know what to say. Are you okay?" Claire had been a client for 8 years. He had met her after her divorce, when fear sat heavy on her shoulders and trust came slowly. Over time, their talks had moved beyond numbers. They spoke about her son's college dreams, about quiet weekends, about finding peace after loss. Daniel had always kept a respectful distance, but something gentle had grown there, unspoken and steady. "I'm fine," Daniel said when he called her back. "Just surprised. I can't imagine Riverton without you," she said. "If you're not there, I don't see the point of staying." Daniel paused. "That's your choice. I don't want anyone acting out of anger." "It's not anger," Claire said softly. "It's trust." The next day, more calls came. Clients asked questions. They wanted to know why. Daniel told the truth without blame. He said he was grateful. He wished them well. He did not ask anyone to leave. By the end of the week, accounts began to close. At Riverton, Richard watched the numbers dip and told himself it would stabilize. By the second week, the dip became a drop. Advisors scrambled. Emails went unanswered. Clients asked for Daniel by name. "He's not here anymore," they were told. "That's the problem," many replied. Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't smile at the news. He spent his days updating his resume, taking long walks, cooking meals he rarely had time for before. At night, he read Emily's old letters, reminders of who he had been before work took over. Claire invited him for coffee. He hesitated, then agreed. They met at a small cafe with fogged windows and soft light. It felt normal in a way Daniel had missed. They talked easily about the city, about books, about what comes next when plans fall apart. "You ever think this might be a beginning?" Claire asked. Daniel smiled. "I'm still figuring that out." As weeks passed, the calls slowed, then changed. Former clients didn't ask where to move their money. They asked where Daniel was going. "I don't know yet," he said honestly. At Riverton, the mood darkened. 70% of key clients had left. Meetings turned tense. Richard replayed his decision late at night, searching for a mistake he refused to name. Daniel stood at his apartment window one evening, city lights blinking like quiet signals. He felt fear, yes, but also something else. Relief, possibility. He didn't know it yet. But the firing that ended his old life had opened the door to a truer one. And the loyalty he had given freely for 25 years was about to return in ways no spreadsheet could ever measure. Richard Collins slammed his office door behind him, the sound echoing through the empty hallways of Riverton Financial Group. He stared at the screen in disbelief. The numbers refusing to lie. Nearly 70% of the firm's most loyal clients had pulled their accounts. Panic clawed at him, but anger pushed harder. He had fired Daniel Harper thinking it would modernize his company, thinking it would make his business sharper, leaner, more professional. Instead, he had unknowingly removed the soul of the firm, a man who had built trust over decades, who had listened when no one else cared, who had held families together with simple acts of kindness and honesty. Every call Richard made now was met with hesitation. Every email with delay, and every client he reached seemed distant, almost as if a personal betrayal had been embedded in the company's DNA. Meanwhile, Daniel sat quietly in a small cafe in Evanston. Far from the glass towers and corporate meetings, the place was simple, with wooden chairs and the smell of fresh coffee curling through the air. But it was perfect for what he needed. A pause. A moment to breathe after the whirlwind of losing his job, the betrayal, and the sudden rush of responsibility that now felt like it belonged entirely to him. He stared out the window at the lake, the water catching the late afternoon sun in golden waves, a gentle reminder that life, even after heartbreak and betrayal, could still be beautiful. The phone calls he had expected to be full of complaints and cold professionalism had instead been filled with warmth and concern. Claire Mitchell, one of his longtime clients, had called the very next day. Her voice, soft yet firm, carried a note of disappointment, not just in his firing, but in the loss of their connection. In the absence of someone who had cared, Daniel had always been more than a financial advisor. He had been a confidant, a guide, a steady presence. Claire reminded him of that. "If you're gone, so am I," she said, and the gravity of her words hit him. Others followed quickly, family accounts, friends, businesses he had watched grow. Each call was the same. Not anger, not spite, but a quiet assertion. Daniel was not replaceable. Richard had not just let go of an employee. He had cut away the core that clients had grown to trust, the human element that no technology or corporate policy could replace. Richard's panic grew each day. His attempts to reach out felt hollow, the tone of his voice failing to convey the authenticity he lacked. He scheduled meetings, sent polite emails, offered discounts and new packages. But the clients no longer responded to him. They responded to Daniel. It was as if the act of firing Daniel had lit a quiet rebellion. The clients weren't just leaving a company, they were choosing integrity over convenience, loyalty over hierarchy. Each closed account, each withdrawal was a silent testament to Daniel's influence, a reminder that human connection and trust could never be bought or forced. Daniel, on the other hand, had started to embrace this unexpected turn of life with surprising grace. He met with former clients one by one. But now, without the structure of a corporate office, without the pressure of quotas and growth charts, each meeting was slow, intentional, focused on the people, not the money. He listened, asked about families, about life, about hopes and regrets. Some conversations were tinged with laughter, some with tears. But every interaction reminded him why he had chosen this work in the first place. Not for the numbers, not for prestige, but for the human stories behind them. Clients he had helped navigate divorce, illness, or a financial uncertainty were returning not because he promised them returns, but because he had once promised them care. Claire's presence became a quiet anchor for Daniel during this period. Their conversations, initially professional, had grown into something softer, more personal. She would sit across from him at the cafe, sharing stories of her children, her struggles, her dreams she had tucked away while raising her family. Daniel would respond with advice, encouragement, and an unspoken empathy that made her feel seen in a way no one else had. There was no rush, no expectation, just the warmth of someone who had known another person's heart for years. Slowly, Daniel began to feel something he hadn't allowed himself in a long time: hope. The kind that isn't loud or flashy, but steady and comforting. Like a fire lit after a long winter, the pace of life for Daniel shifted. He began planning quietly, almost subconsciously, for a future he hadn't envisioned when he first packed up his office. The calls kept coming, more and more clients reaching out, asking for guidance, for advice, for support. He realized the trust he had cultivated over decades was more than professional, it was personal. And this realization sparked an idea. Why not build something small, something intimate? Something that honored the principle he had always stood by: people before profit. Word spread slowly at first, almost like a ripple on calm water. Former clients told friends, friends recommended him to colleagues. And soon Daniel was meeting new faces who sought the guidance they could no longer find in the cold corporate environment Richard had created. Daniel wasn't chasing clients. He was reconnecting with them, forming bonds that went beyond contracts and numbers. In this new venture, every decision was measured, thoughtful, centered on integrity, empathy, and genuine care. And as the client base grew, so did Daniel's confidence. He had been cast out, yes, but in that casting out, he had discovered his own strength, his own voice, and a path that felt more authentic than any he had walked before. Meanwhile, Richard Collins was left behind, watching as his empire faltered. His spreadsheets were full of figures, but the heart behind the numbers was gone. He realized too late that firing Daniel had not been about modernizing a firm. It had been about removing its essence. Money, processes, and technology could not replace the decades of trust Daniel had built. Richard began reaching out again, attempting apologies, trying to mend what had been broken. But Daniel was no longer available in the same way. Clients were loyal to him, and Richard was a reminder of what they had left behind. Every conversation Daniel had was genuine, rich with emotion, not dictated by corporate policy or fear of a boss. And with each passing day, Richard understood a hard truth: relationships, loyalty, trust, these were the foundation of any business, and once broken, they were nearly impossible to rebuild. As Daniel settled into this new rhythm, he began to notice something else. Life, in its quiet way, was offering more than just professional renewal. His bond with Claire deepened, moving past mere friendship into something tender, comforting, and subtly romantic. They would meet after clients' appointments, sharing small joys, of pastry at the cafe, a walk along the lakefront, quiet laughter that filled spaces left empty by work and worry. There was a growing understanding between them, a sense of companionship that felt natural, unforced, and incredibly rare. Daniel realized that life could still hold happiness, even after betrayal, even after loss. It could hold connection, warmth, and the kind of love that wasn't about passion alone, but about being truly seen, understood, and valued. The decision to open Harper Advisory was not sudden. It was a quiet, deliberate step. He rented a modest office near the lake, welcoming returning clients with a simple sign that read, "Guidance with Integrity." Every detail of the space reflected his philosophy: warm lighting, comfortable chairs, personal touches that made clients feel at home. Daniel wanted them to feel that they were not just accounts to be managed, but people whose lives mattered. The office quickly became a space where families felt safe, where young professionals sought mentorship, and where people understood that financial advice could come with heart, compassion, and genuine care. Clients returned, not out of anger toward Richard, but out of recognition of Daniel's enduring dedication. Each one brought a story, a question, a concern. And Daniel met them with the same patient attentiveness that had defined his career. It was a rhythm of work he had almost forgotten, and yet it felt more rewarding than any corporate achievement he had ever known. Slowly, Harper Advisory grew, not as a giant in the financial world, but as a trusted, respected institution within its community. The kind that thrived on reputation, trust, and word-of-mouth recommendations rather than flashy marketing campaigns or aggressive sales tactics. Richard, watching from his office, began to understand what he had lost. He could see the difference in client loyalty, in satisfaction, in the quiet influence Daniel had. He had fired an employee, but he had dismissed the principle of care. The dedication to personal connection, the human touch that could never be replaced by spreadsheets or policy memos. And in that realization, there was regret, sharp and undeniable. Every client he lost, every account closed, every missed opportunity was a reminder that numbers without heart were hollow. As months passed, Daniel's life settled into a gentle rhythm. Work was fulfilling, relationships were meaningful, and every day brought a quiet sense of accomplishment. Claire remained a constant, her presence a reminder that human connection, loyalty, and understanding could weather any storm. They spent afternoons walking by the lake, discussing dreams, future plans, and memories of past struggles. There was no rush in their relationship. No forced expectations, just companionship that grew naturally, like a tree rooted in fertile soil, nourished by trust and patience. In this quiet yet powerful way, Daniel Harper transformed what could have